The king is dying, but no one dares to say it aloud. The air in Whitehall Palace is thick with something unseen. Not just the stench of rotting flesh and unwashed linen, but the weight of fear, of secrets, of silence outside, the heavy velvet curtains that suffocate his chambers. Servants whisper of curses and sins, of a once mighty man now too bloated to move, too diseased to breathe without help. Henry VIII, the King of England, the second Tudor monarch, the man who once dazzled Europe with his strength and charm, is decaying from the inside out, and the court is rotting with him. It is January 1547, and Henry knows the end is near, but he will not name it his. Courtiers perform the lie with perfect discipline. They bow low, speak gently, call him majesty. Even as his legs ooze black pus, even as the smell from his ulcered body drives dogs away in disgust, no one dares speak of death in the presence of a king, because to predict the death of a monarch is treason, and treason still ends on the block sill. The silence continues, carefully managed, crafted like the rituals of court itself. Behind the masks of loyalty, everyone is waiting for the body to fail, waiting for the kingdom to shift, waiting for their chance. The once glorious king who had broken with Rome, beheaded wives, burned heretics, shaped a new church, now lies helpless in his bed, weighing over 350 pounds, ravaged by gout, crippled by infected leg wounds, and possibly suffering from diabetes or worse. But he clings to power with the desperation of a man who knows what death means. Not peace, but exposure of lies, of betrayals, of deals made in shadow. King's mind is still sharp in moments, but those moments grow fewer. He drifts, rages, sleeps for days, and wakes. Howling, his servants come and go like ghosts, changing blood-soaked sheets, applying stinking salves to wounds that will not close, feeding him broth when his teeth can no longer chew, and wine when his thirst grows violent. He can barely write, barely speak, but one order still matters above all: his heir must be protected, his legacy preserved. Edward, his pale young son, born of his third wife, Jane Seymour, only wife to die before he could destroy her. Edward is just 9 years old, fragile, quiet, and watched like a prisoner in a golden cage. Henry knows how fragile the Tudor line truly is. He remembers the chaos before his father claimed the throne, the endless war of cousins and kings. He has no intention of allowing that chaos to return, not while he still draws breath. But every nobleman at court, every lord and bishop, knows that the real power will belong not to the boy, but to the men who stand behind him, and those men are already maneuvering, among them Edward Seymour, the boy's uncle, ambitious, cunning, ready, and Thomas Wriothesley, the loyal chancellor, cold, calculating, terrified of what happens if Henry dies without a clear path. They want Henry to sign documents, final declarations, confirming who will guide the kingdom when he is gone. But Henry stalls. He trusts no one, and with good reason. He has watched friends betray him, wives deceive him, enemies rise and fall in a single night. His paranoia is not madness. It is survival, because around him, the palace hums with danger messages are smuggled through laundry baskets, spies lurk in the kitchens, whispers pass through chapel walls. Even his final will, the most sacred paper in the realm, may not be what it seems. Modern historians believe it was altered after Henry slipped into unconsciousness, that men like Seymour added their names, removed others, forged loyalty, and shaped the future, while the king, unable to protest, drifted between waking and dying. But in these final days, it is not just politics that haunts him. It is judgment. Henry believed himself chosen by God, anointed holy. But what God allows a king to die like this? He cannot walk. He cannot pray. He cannot even be touched without screaming. His once great body, the same that jousted and hunted and seduced, is now a prison. Every night, the groaning echoes through the stone halls as doctors attempt to lance the wounds again, using knives that have more in common with torture than medicine. And still the poison inside him fester, Some say his soul is already gone, that his suffering is punishment for the wives he murdered, for the blood he spilled, for the monasteries he burned, and sometimes when no one else is in the room, when only the flicker of candlelight remains, the king seems to see something, a shadow at the edge of his vision. A woman in white, a whisper that sounds like Anne Boleyn. Beheaded by his command, did she come to forgive him, or to take him in those moments? Henry's eyes fill with something rare fear, not of death itself, but of what waits beyond. He clutches his crucifix, but the peace it once gave him is gone. He tries to confess, but no priest dares speak of penance in the presence of a king, so he lies there drowning in his own body, choked by the weight of everything he built and everything he destroyed. The court waits. The candles burn low, and England, for the first time in decades, holds its breath. January 26th, the physicians gather at the foot of the bed, their faces pale, their hands trembling despite the layers of fur-lined robes. The room smells of rot and rose water. The sickly perfume of royal decay. Henry is unconscious again, his breathing shallow, each exhale a rattling gasp that echoes against the damp stone walls. But still, no one speaks the word. No one says the king is dying, because until he takes his final breath, he is the law, he is the state, he is the wrath of God made flesh, in England is trained to fear him even. Now the lords know they must be careful. One wrong move, one word spoken too early, could damn them. There is no room for pity here, only calculation. Edward Seymour waits in silence, his eyes on the will, on the seals, on the royal ring still clutched in the king's swollen fingers. Ria Thesley whispers to the archbishop, they must be ready, but cautious the king may rise. Again, he has done it before, risen from fever, from collapse, like some cursed lion who refuses to fall. But this time is different. The ulcer on his leg is opened, and what spills from it is no longer blood. It is something darker, a sour black liquid, thick like tar. The doctors try again. They press cloths soaked in vinegar, apply ointments of lead and crushed pearls, superstition wrapped in medicine. But the wound does not close. It hisses, festers, devours. Some say it is the devil's mark, proof that God has turned his face away. Others whisper of syphilis, of gangrene, of a curse laid long ago by a betrayed Queen Anne Catherine. Maybe even Wolsey, who died in disgrace before he could face the executioner. And then there is the fear that no one dares speak aloud, that the king's mind has been lost for far longer than anyone admitted. Because in his final lucid hours, Henry speaks not of Edward, not of God, but of ghosts. He calls for Jane Seymour as if she were alive. He mutters to Anne Boleyn as if she never died. He accuses Thomas More, begging him to stop staring, to stop judging. He cries out, not in pain, but in memory of jousts, of songs of the field, of the cloth of gold, and of betrayal. His voice is a cracked whisper, a child's murmur in the shell of a monstrous body. Those who hear it do not forget it. The final collapse comes on. January 27th. He does not wake that morning, and this time no physician can pretend otherwise. His breathing slows, then stops. The silence that follows is not relief, it is terror, because a king's death is not just an ending, it is a storm. The courtiers begin to move immediately. The doors are shut, the windows covered, the news is sealed like a weapon, because until they decide how to tell the world, Henry VIII is still alive for 3 days. His death is hidden. The body lies bloated, covered in silks that cannot hide the stench. He is rotting faster than expected, and no one dares move him. Only the most loyal dare enter the room, and even they weep behind gloved hands. Rituals begin. The heart is removed, the body embalmed, or what can be embalmed. The rest is packed in herbs, spices, heavy cloth, but nothing stops the smell. It seeps from the wooden coffin, filling the chapel, infecting the prayers with the scent of death. They call it the smell of sanctity, but everyone knows the truth. It is the smell of a man who died full of rage and wrought on January 30th. The death is announced, and England shudders not with grief, but with fear of what comes next. The boy King Edward VI is proclaimed, but he is too young to rule, so the power shifts to Seymour to Wriothesley. To the council and behind them, a web of ambition stretches unseen. The old king's will is read, or at least what is left of it. Some names are missing. Others are mysteriously elevated. Questions are asked in whispers, but no answers come because no one dares investigate the dead king's wishes too closely. What matters now is survival. The funeral procession begins on February 14th, Valentine's Day. There is no irony in it, only shadow. Coffin is dragged by black-plumed horses through mud and frost. From Westminster to Windsor. Inside the coffin, the body shifts at one stop. In Sion Abbey, the coffin is laid in the chapel overnight. And there, a terrible thing happens. According to legend, the coffin leaks black liquid, seeping through the wood onto the stones below, and a stray dog, a black stray, licks the blood moss. See it and whisper the words of an ancient prophecy. Dogs will lick his blood like Ahab, the cursed king of Israel. The story spreads, even if it may not be true, because it feels true. Henry's sins, his crimes, his pride, they cling to him in death. They did in life, and no amount of gold, no tomb of marble can wash them away. At Windsor, the body is lowered into the crypt beside Jane Seymour, the only wife who gave him the son he so desperately needed. He is not buried beside Anne or Catherine or any other queen, only Jane, as if in death. He tries to rewrite the story, to pretend the others never mattered, but the ghosts remain. They always don't. So the coffin rests in the dark beneath Windsor, sealed in stone, beneath gold lettering that praises his might, his victories, his legacy. But legacy is a fragile thing. The boy King Edward, crowned before he is old enough to understand war or power, is guided by men who hunger more than they protect. Within months, rivalries erupt. Thomas Seymour Edwards' uncle plots to control the boy directly. He sneaks into the king's chambers at night, whispers gifts and promises, and is eventually caught, charged with treason, executed like so many before him. The blood continues to flow, as if the kingdom itself still echoes the fury of the old king's reign. Edward will not last. He dies at just 15, sickly, lonely, without ever wielding the power his father built, and in the vacuum left behind, the throne becomes a battlefield. Again, Mary, Tudor Henry's eldest daughter, takes the crown by force and turns the kingdom back toward Rome. She lights the fires as Smithfield burns Protestants in the name of her faith and earns the name Bloody Mary, but she too will die childless. Then comes Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the girl Henry once declared illegitimate, unworthy, dangerous. Now she wears the crown and rules with iron and brilliance for 45 years. The daughter of the wife he killed becomes the monarch who defines an age, and in that irony, there is something almost divine. Henry tried to control the future with fear, with blood, with fire. But the future belongs to none of us, not even kings. The man who once broke from Rome to forge a new church, who tore down monasteries, beheaded queens, burned saints and rebels alike, could not stop the tides that followed. His sons died young. His daughters took power, and the church he created changed beyond recognition in death. Henry is silent, but his shadow lingers. Every debate about power, every fear of tyranny, every story of a ruler corrupted by ambition echoes back to him, and perhaps that is his true legacy. Not the pageantry, not the titles, not the reforms or ruins, but the warning that power unchecked devours the man who holds it and poisons everything he touches. Because Henry VIII did not just die from disease, he died from the weight of what he had become. He believed himself chosen, anointed, untouchable, but in the end, he was a man who suffered, who feared, who cried out in the dark for wives. He destroyed and begged for forgiveness. He never truly sought. There is a tragedy in that, a haunting reminder that even kings, especially kings, cannot escape the consequences of their own making. And now, in the silence of his crypt, the once mighty king rests in shadow, surrounded not by songs of glory, but by the echoes of everything he left undone. His bones lie cold, his name engraved in stone, but the rot, the suffering, the madness, those remain, not just in books, but in us. Because every generation must ask again, what do we sacrifice in the name of power, and who must bleed to feed the crown? Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, if it made you see history not as dust, but as something alive, something human, then join us again, subscribe to the channel, and walk with us through the dark halls of the past, where the truth is rarely simple and the shadows never sleep.